Turned you all the way up. Turn it up to 11. Let's go.
Sounds great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Just got out of a design meeting, talking with some other designers about stuff for the future. We're mostly moving on to planning stuff for the future now that we're so close to the Lifeblood release.
Awesome. So the Lifeblood you're pretty much done with all the Lifeblood Lifeblood stuff that's coming out in like less than a week.
Yeah. We've been feature complete for a while. It's definitely in bug fixing mode now, but we're at this point, the number of bugs coming in and being found is diminishing, which is what it should be.
Awesome. How long did it take you to recover from Vegas? I gotta know.
Took me probably 5 or 6 days. I got a cold, which is to be expected when you're hanging out with people from all over North America and all over the world, and lots of hugs and lots of handshakes and not getting enough sleep. I got off easy though. A lot of people got hit harder. I've heard stories from some of the other offices, and some of the people here in Iceland too got a pretty nasty flu that thankfully I was able to dodge.
That's crazy. Bjorn on Monday. Bjorn laid. We were in a Airbnb house together with a couple other people, and Bjorn laid on a couch for 12 hours. Just laid on. We watched 3 Hobbit movies. That's it. That's because we were done. Like after Sunday, we were done.
Yeah. The events like that are a great time, but they also wear you right out. Lots of running around, lots of drinking, not enough sleep. It'll get you after a couple of days.
Yeah, I remember running into you in one of the hotels. We had just gotten there, and then security asked us all to leave.
Yes, yeah, one of the after parties from the Dre's party. That was a really good time.
That was right after. Did you hear what happened at the Moose Army?
I heard
party?
What happened.
Yeah,
I wasn't there for that, but yeah, the glass wall getting shattered.
We walked in like 5 minutes before that happened. I used the same bathroom, like the door broke, and like walked out, went to go grab water, heard the crash. I was like, well, time to go to the other party. It was pretty good. I had a lot of fun. Do you remember the guy yelling at you for 20 minutes about grilled cheese and tie dye and stuff?
You may have to be more specific.
the guy entered a warp in his bomber, and he went to make a grilled cheese.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. He will probably show up today, and because we have been giving him little bit of little shit since then. A couple people from Vegas started watching the stream, and that's like the first thing they said when they came in. But you don't understand. In a bomber, grilled cheese sandwich. Yes. Yep, Korg is God. That's who it was. Everyone knows. So, Fozzie, what to kind of get the introduction started, I want to ask 2 questions. 1, how long have you been a dev? And 2, what is your area of like focus changes? For now, are you working on like Upwell Structures in more particular, or what is it? What's the scope?
Yeah, okay. So I have been working at CCP for just a little over 5 years. My 5-year anniversary of being a full-time CCP employee is actually coming up pretty soon.
Nice.
I started out on a like provisional temporary hire for the first 6 months.
Sweet.
And as for exactly what I'm working on, mostly Upwell Structures at the moment. So I'm one of the game designers on Team 5.0. Our focus for the past year and a bit has been on Upwell Structures. We picked up the Upwell Structure project from Team Game of Drones when they ended up kind of distributing and disbanding that development team.
Okay.
And before that, on all kinds of stuff. Our team tends to focus on systems design, on systems especially that are focused on more veteran players. But sometimes veteran players can mean anyone who's been in the game for more than like 2 weeks.
Interesting. Okay. So as far as the current upcoming stuff, like the stuff that announced at Vegas, your main focus was the Upwall Structures, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome.
We're focused on the refineries and all the features connected to it. So moon mining and the ledger and all that kind of stuff for Lifeblood. And then for the post Lifeblood period, our immediate focus is on the like Upwell Structures 2.0 stuff that we announced at Vegas.
Yeah, the 2.0, the Upwall Structure 2.0 talk was awesome. Like you guys hit, you touched on um, so many points that were like areas of contention between the community, between like timers and like people dropping millions of inactive Astra houses and all that stuff. That was pretty pretty awesome. Um, and the roundtable afterwards was really cool. I have a tidbit of information I really took from it to bring up a little bit later. Um, I really, I really like that you gave. I actually talked to Rise at the pub crawl. I was like, there was no one better to give that talk than you, than Fozzie. He's like, yeah. I was like, he gets so much hate, like just like directed at him, and then he gives this amazing like, yeah, we listened. Here are all the fixes. Drop mic later, nerds.
Yeah, it was definitely it was a really good time. Both the presentation and the roundtable went great. I definitely like don't want to take credit for the change. Like obviously, this stuff is a team effort,
Right.
which applies just as much in the cases where people are really happy about it as in the cases where they're not. But we needed somebody to stand up on stage, and I'm one of the people who is feels comfortable enough doing that. So I end up doing that a fair bit.
Awesome. So, how this is going to work, guys, is so we know the scope of what Fozzie works on. You can try to ask like art questions or stuff like that, but if he doesn't know, it's just a wasted question. So, kind of want to keep the questions within the scope of something you can answer. When I talked to Guard at the bar, he was like, pretty much anything's fair game as long as the dev knows 100% what they're talking about. So we want to keep the scope of the questions into something that is what Fozzie mentioned. So the moon mining changes, the moon mining Upwell structure, the ledger, which is actually really cool, and then the Upwell 2.0. I have a few questions. A lot of them are either stuff we either talked about the roundtable and you answered there, and then the people in chat that didn't get to come to the roundtable, didn't get to go to Vegas or didn't get to come, can hear the answer, and then um, other questions we have came up with since then. So are you ready to go?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So you mentioned you were thinking. Someone brought up using GTFOs um, against capitals, and you were unsure. You were like, well, because it's not something you guys talked about, right? But you were. So have you given that any more thought?
Yeah, so for anyone who's not familiar, the GTFO is this Titan module that allows you to select an area of space, and after a couple of seconds, it teleports everyone in that area of space to a random spot in the solar system. We decided not to allow it for capitals, largely because it would have been a very powerful tool for moving a capital away from a big battle as kind of an escape mechanism.
Gotcha.
And so using it on your friends, we wanted to make sure it didn't get too powerful. Um, that is, I think, probably still the big concern if we were to allow it on capitals. Is it wouldn't be a question of being too powerful against other capitals, though the fact that dreads can't dodge it when they're sieged and facts can't dodge it when they're sieged or triaged means that they can be potentially sitting ducks, and it might be too powerful that way too. But yeah, we have to be careful with it. It might be the kind of thing we could potentially explore first on a structure version that we've announced we're interested in exploring, and then if that works out well, expand to Titans. But don't want to make any promises.
Right. Yeah, that's something you talked about. You talked in the roundtable about the reason the Titan S modules on the Upwell structures can be more powerful, or you have the potential to be more powerful because there's a limit to basically one per grid, right?
Yeah. You can only have one that can affect you at once, which is a really good control for both server performance stuff and power creep.
Yeah, you can't instead of getting dread bombed by like 90 titans or titan bombed, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
Cool. So as it stands, it's a no, but maybe something to revisit later.
Yeah, I think it would be the kind of thing that I wouldn't want to rule out, but that I also don't want to promise.
Okay. A rooter of Eve asked about tiny structures, and you actually mentioned something about like rapid deployment citadels. Very like roughly mentioned something. I think you mentioned like it would be the first small class. It would have faster anchoring, limited or no docking, and some stuff like that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're really interested in exploring that. Obviously, there's a small slot available in these structures. We've got medium, large, extra large, but no small right now.
Right.
And we think there's some cool opportunities to fill that with structures that maybe can't dock or maybe have very limited docking, like only for shuttles and pods or something like that. Maybe some of them might provide tether, some might not. Some might be able to be anchored more quickly for people that want a kind of a replacement for a Ninja small POS, but also potentially even explore things like having them decay directly. So instead of being anchorable and unanchorable, have them be limited use. Like this structure will last 2 days, so it's intended to be a disposable kind of thing.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, so none of that's been decided,
Right.
like committed to. Those are just all things we're exploring at the moment. We also think those kind of structures would work really well for advertising structures as well, for these kind of propaganda structures. We think these kind of structures would potentially work well for things like Sino beacons and Sino jammers, jump bridges. So that's the kind of stuff that we are interested in exploring potentially over the next year.
Awesome. You mentioned limited or I guess the option is limited or no tethering. And you actually talked about this at the round table with someone asked directly about like mass restricted tethering or mass limited tethering. Your counter argument was, I guess for lack of a better term, counter argument was you don't as of yet know a way to convey that to the user, like whether they can tether or can't tether, or like how to convey that information so that they don't like land on a Fortizar and then die and not know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. I think that's something we have to be very careful about with any feature we add, right? How easily can a player understand what's going on, understand the choices available to them? It's good for the choices to be hard choices, but it sucks if the reason the choices are hard is because people don't know what's available to them and don't know what the potential outcomes are. So a situation where because you don't necessarily know the mass of all the other ships
Right.
around a structure too, right? So if you warp to a structure or you log in or you just undock, and in all these situations you don't know whether you're going to be able to tether, and even when you're on grid you might not know whether you're going to tether. That's the kind of stuff we'd have to be very careful with how we communicate it.
And you don't know their fit because modules
Yeah.
can increase mass too. So even if you did like saw on D scan, you're like and did like napkin math, you don't know their fit, right?
Yeah. So we'd have to be very careful with that. I think it's an interesting idea. It's an idea that I hadn't really heard discussed before Vegas. With these kind of ideas, if they do end up ever making it to the game, often it's because they get suggested and then they simmer for a while and get refined over time as people think about them. And this might be one of those cases. We'll see.
Sweet. Artani has a question. Are the observatory arrays mentioned a couple years ago still in the works? And this is something you mentioned at the roundtable, but you mentioned why you didn't go over it during the presentation. But
Yes, yeah. In hindsight, I regret not mentioning it in the presentation because what we did in the presentation was we went through this list of here are the next ones on that we're considering. Obviously, those plans can change. Like the order that we work on them is very flexible. It can definitely change, but the current plan is for the observatory arrays to be a bit further away than these structures I mentioned in the presentation. But what I should have done is explicitly mentioned, hey, these are still happening. I kind of assumed them being on the screen would do that, but that's the kind of thing that you get good feedback on when you actually give the presentation. But yeah, we do still want to add structures like that in the future, but they're a bit further away. And so I wouldn't want to say necessarily, I mean, in the works kind of implies that we're actively working on them right now, which we're not, but we do want to do them in the future.
And you, I guess, very roughly talked about like maybe being tied to like Intel or local stuff like that.
Yes, yeah. I think there's a lot of cool possibilities with structures that collect intel and block intel, and that generally allow people to have a more kind of granular control over what intel is available from things like local, things like the map, stuff like that.
Awesome. Buffalo's asked, once bosses are replaced, what happens to the faction blueprints that I have?
So the answer to that is there will be some reimbursement. We don't have all the details figured out for that yet. Most likely they will be converted into BPCs for another faction item of roughly equivalent value.
And you, I don't know if it was, I think it was your roundtable, but the siphon units, the mobile siphon units, are not. I don't think they're going to be usable with moon mining changes.
That is correct. Yeah, they're not going to be usable with it. The way to steal from moon mining after Lifeblood is to just walk up and mine their stuff.
Just drop a oracle and just start mining. Got it.
Yeah.
So the siphon unit BPs.
Yeah, so they're going to be phased out.
Okay. Cool. So and they'll probably do something similar with that, or you guys will probably do something similar with that, with changing them to a different item or just some reimbursements.
Yep. Yeah, what we generally do with stuff like that is for the built items themselves, so like in this case, the built siphons, will down the road allow people to refine them back for their full build value. And for the blueprints, if you have a unresearched, unassembled BPO, we'll provide you the ability to sell that back at full price to the NPC. And for everyone who can't do that, we'll provide the option, we'll convert it over eventually to a blueprint of equivalent value.
All right. Marshal asked, I think you guys asked this a lot, looking at Cloaking Camping, specifically, I think people are asking about AFK cloak camping, because I think the contention becomes that it's not really cloaked people in your system. It's when they're AFK versus not AFK. You know, someone AFK 23 hours a day versus someone at their computer. Do you have any thoughts for or against, or looking at, I guess, ways around it or ways to make it more active?
Yeah, I mean, so we definitely think there's opportunity to add more interesting gameplay here. And that's the kind of area where I think it's likely observatories would be very valuable, providing a way for people to have some kind of cat and mouse gameplay. I think that would be really good. We wouldn't want to make it be too trivial to catch a cloaker, obviously, but it would be an opportunity for a whole new type of gameplay, which we are always excited to look forward to, is new types of gameplay to add. It is in a lot of ways also an Intel connected issue. This is obviously a problem that doesn't exist in wormhole space.
Yeah.
And so it's an issue that we can potentially we can improve the experience for everyone involved by making changes to the way you get intel about who's in your system. But again, a lot of that stuff is a bit further down the line. It's not something that I think would be changed right away.
Right. But it's something that's at least on your guys' radar to work on, work towards eventually. All right, good question. Let's see. Oh, someone in the roundtable mentioned outpost construction 5 skill. Currently, I guess it's not used for anything. I don't have it, but currently it's not used for anything. You mentioned it might fit the theme to make it usable for or required for Tech 2 structure modules. Is there any further development on that side?
Nothing that I can really announce. We don't have anything confirmed, but it is something we would like to add new functionality to. It always kind of sucks when you have a skill that a certain level that doesn't do anything. And there's obviously at the round table I joked the really cop out way of being able to put a stamp on it and say it's useful for something would be to require it for building the Palatine, but that's not a particularly commonly used use for the skill. But yeah, we'd like to add some opportunities for it, and Tech 2 structure modules I think would be a very good candidate for that.
All right. Um, you have mobile refinery operation 5, Yusuf. Wow. Um, so this is something you touched on with Upwell Structures in the roundtable. Them going to always vulnerable. Their shield is always vulnerable, which means their defense mechanisms will always vulnerable, like scram and web. And then you went furthermore to say they're not really ideal. The way the E-War from the Upwell Structures currently works.
Yeah. It's very strong, which obviously it makes sense. It's a structure to be really strong, but right. The possibility to have this powerful web and scram that you can apply ends up just, I think, limiting the kind of options. It makes it hard for people to maneuver fleets. You can easily prevent one member, often the anchor, but otherwise just one member from keeping up. And so I'd be interested in exploring things like having them have to turn off for a little while. Like you can web and scram somebody for a bit so that you can, for instance, use it to give you time for your defending fleet, then get a scram on them, but not necessarily be a constant web and scram for the entire fight.
Okay, so it'd be a limited duration limitation.
Yeah, potentially, like maybe with some kind of cooldown. So you can use it for this powerful ability to allow your fleet to get on top of them, but it's a bit less powerful than for a structure that doesn't have defenders and just has a one gunner.
That sounds great. I mean, I personally warp to every Sino on every structure, pretty much ever. So you know, when they're not vulnerable currently, I just laugh because they can't do anything to defend. Pretty much defend for me. Like they can cap me out, but that doesn't really matter. So people were joking with the changes that a lot of people that go after Sinos will be dying, which is fine. I mean, I should get punished. Hazel Leet, nice name, asks how much will the medium, I'm assuming you mean medium and large refineries cost? Because I don't think you guys have a small refinery, right? It's just medium and large.
No, it's medium and large.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it's about $1 billion for the medium, and the large is a little bit. It's cheaper than the Fortizar, more expensive than the Asbel, but I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head.
Okay, I mean that gives a great point of reference. Is so you said cheaper than the Fortizar, more expensive than the Asbel.
Yeah, and that's the case with the medium as well. Basically, in cost, in both blueprint cost and the actual build materials, these new refineries are in between the engineering complex and the Citadel in cost.
Taking notes. Hold on. Around 10 bill, 12 bill. Whatever. Does anyone know current Fortizar cost? Jusiv, do you know current Fortizar costs? I think you just might know. A census asks, what happened to Citadels being able to act as triage? Initially, it was promised that they would have remote reps.
Yeah, so promised is a strong word. The idea of giving them remote reps was definitely looked into, and it was one of the things that got brought up by CCP Terbium in one of the early presentations about the kind of things that they're investigating. The decision was eventually made that the versions that we had at the time would have been too strong, especially in cases where you have like a bait Sino and then one person outside the Citadel and then the remote rep on them. It kind of sucks to have a remote rep in a fight that you don't feel you can interact with. Like if the remote rep with a Logi, you can shoot the Logi, or you can jam the Logi, or whatever else. If it's a structure, then you can't necessarily actually get that rep gone.
Right.
What I'm interested in exploring is doing things like having a weaker but AOE rep, perhaps, on them. I think that would be really cool, because that would be useful for fleet fights, but not as useful for like having one solo PvPer with an alt in the structure baiting people.
No, so it would be like a lesser version of the tether rep, as well, kind of thing. Like you.
I mean, potentially, but I think like if I was to imagine the way we might do it in the future, something like a remote burst, like the supercarrier remote burst, but instead of doing negative things that those do, like webbing and nuding, it would rep everyone that gets hit by that area.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, in that case, it might be a fairly weak rep individually, but if you have a fleet that has a lot of collective damage, like maybe they've taken a bunch of incidental bomb damage over the course of the fight and stuff like that, then it can be potentially really useful.
I don't know if this is within the scope, but maybe you have the intel on it. ETA on the public announcement of the list of new alpha skills.
I don't know when that's going to happen. I know it's being worked on, and I know there's some versions that I've seen and talked to Rise about, but I don't know when we plan on announcing them.
Okay. Yeah. So if just reiterate, guys, if there's a question that comes up, I'll ask it. But if it isn't within the scope of directly what Fozzie works on, then he's not going to be able to give an answer, because he won't.
Yep.
Be on the team that worked on it.
I mean, in some cases, I might be able to,
Right.
even if I'm not working on it directly. But yeah, it's fine to ask, and I'll tell you whether I know the answer or whether I'm allowed to say the answer, and if
not. Census asks again, why doesn't the Ninazu never get skins? Even with the last Galente skin release, it didn't get one.
I'm not sure. I think
help us out.
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't really keep track of exactly what skins, what ships get picked for different skin passes. I'll pass that along to the store people, though. I guess what I will leak is that there's a super exciting Galente skin that's in the works that I really love. It's not releasing in Lifeblood, but that will come eventually, that I've just seen screenshots of internally. And I'll talk to the store guys and see if I can get them to make sure that they include the Nimizu on it.
Is it a police skin?
Awesome. It's not a police skin, but it is it's one of the best things that CCP Pointy Bits has made recently. And if any of you guys follow Eve, he makes awesome things all the time. So.
All right, because we need more police skins. Also, I'm gonna push this. Who do I talk to about police drones?
Police drones.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. The art guys would be the ones who would know whether that skin can apply to a drone or not. It very well might be able to. I'm not sure. I do love police skins though too. I share your love for them.
So good.
You remember back so how the Comet, for anyone that hasn't been around you for a very long time, they might not know. The Navy Comet used to have the police skin all the time, but then it was an outlier. It didn't really make sense that it would have the police skin because it was a Navy ship, so it was given the Navy skin. And I was a player back then. That was before I started working at CCP. And although I understood why it was done, it just kind of hurt me at a deep level. My mind knew that it was an okay decision, but emotionally, I was never able to get over it. So one of the things I really pushed for when I started working here was getting when we ever were going to release skins, which is something we eventually did a couple of years later after I joined, I wanted to make sure that we introduced a police skin for the Comet. That was we need to do that. We need to have a police skin for the Comet. I pushed for that to be the first skin that we put into the game that was available through these in-game means and all this. And when we were ready to start teasing it, we put up I made a little video that was just a 1-hour loop of the blinking lights on the top of the police Comet with the clip of CCP guard saying "whoop whoop" is the sound of the space police from Harden the Fuck Up. And we just put that up on YouTube as the teaser. That was the announcement, just to see if people would figure out what that ship was, if they would recognize the 2 blinking lights on top of the Comet.
That's
what people did.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, more police skins. Someone, if he makes it, Bullets is really into the police Vexer, he wants his police Vexer.
Oh, again, I'm fully on board for more police skins. I once pitched the idea of doing because this was like back when we initially started adding skins. I wanted us to release a trailer about us having skins, which, yeah, maybe a bit over the top. Like it's not really needed, but we could do a really hilarious thing where we have two fleets fighting, like kind of like the Dominion trailer, right? Like big fleets fighting. One fleet is all one skin, the other fleet's all the other skin. And they're fighting it out, and then somebody lights a cyno, a neutral lights a cyno in the middle, and like a bunch of police Moroses and Nixes jump in and start like yelling, "Stop in the name of the law," and all that. And that would have been my ideal trailer, but we never ended up making it.
In the future, it's still possible.
Yeah,
we just got to get. All things are possible through Twitch chat. I
envision that up until that point, it would be a standard, like normal EVE trailer, very serious, the kind of epic music, fleets fighting, a bit of simulated comms, and then somebody lights a cyno and a bunch of people role-playing police jump in police skins. That would have been amazing.
Sounds awesome. Terry asks, will there be any changes to nullsec local in the future?
Quite possibly. We don't have anything short term to announce, but local in general is something we would like to make improvements to. We've never been happy about the way it's used for intel, but obviously we also don't want to just remove its intel capability without adding anything new to replace it.
Right.
So we'd like to have local become just a chat channel in the future someday, but replace that intel gathering ability with some new gameplay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's so make it kind of like wormholes, in the fact that it's primarily just chat, and then remove the population side of it. That sounds good.
That would be the long-term vision, but
right.
No promises, because that right. It's this is EVE Online, so long-term can mean pretty long-term.
J-Dog asked, why can't alphas fly mining barges? I actually asked Rise this in the roundtable. I don't know if you have insight on that. Alphas flying mining barges.
I mean, I wasn't at that roundtable, but I assume that his answer is going to be the same one I'll give here, which is that it was something we were a bit worried about the economic impacts of. We didn't want it to be able to tank mineral markets, so we were more cautious when choosing skills for things like mining than we would have been for things like combat, because we felt that there was more danger of it upsetting the economy that way.
Right.
But we might be able to expand that in the future, and it's something we're interested in exploring.
Yeah, so, I mean, something I mentioned to Rise is that currently alphas have no second goal. If they, if an alpha if a new player starts an alpha and doesn't want to omega right away, they don't have a secondary goal. Like, they get the venture, and there's nothing to build towards. I mean, technically they can go into like a Vexer with mining drones and stuff, but that's like not really intuitive. But I talked about that with Rise at the round table, and he seemed to be very optimistic about some type of fix there.
Yep, I think we have a bunch of options of ways we can expand it. I mean, even if we don't make any other changes, at the very least, like people are saying in chat, the alpha changes may mean the return of alpha mining battleships, like the good old days. Any of you guys are really old school EVE players mining in APOX, and then when the Roke got introduced, and it was suddenly the best mining battleship because it had more CPU.
The Vexer is the best at everything.
Yeah, I used to run level 3 missions in a missile Vexer, because that was before Drakes existed, and heavy missiles were just the better weapon system back then.
When will we get Chinese skins for the Mac? Juicer, stop it.
The Chinese skins, those are done, like, it's basically a special contract with our Chinese partner. So I don't think those specific Chinese skins will ever make it to TQ. I mean, who knows if they ever will, but at least there's no plan to. But we might be able to make some similar stuff for TQ players.
I'm not asking for numbers, but has the alpha program resulted in more Omega accounts? further question: is the player base growing?
So it's growing, depends on the way you're measuring it, right? Like it's growing year on year. We're higher than we were last year at this time. But obviously it's lower than it was like 6 months ago. We got a big burst, as you would expect, from a game opening up free to play for the first time. A lot of people came to try it out, and some of them stayed. And so yes, I'm very confident in saying that having alphas means there are more omegas right now than there would be if we didn't have alphas.
All right. Question: why Hazel asks, why no awesome trailer for this expansion like the previous ones?
The trailer team, we have them do kind of different types of trailers for different expansions. The really big storyline ones, those take a whole lot of work. So for this one, we did one that was a bit more feature focused. We've done that before too, right? Like I think the first one I can remember being in that style was the Crucible trailer back in 2011, where it's just a collection of features with some music. And those ones tend to be more aimed at existing players, because that's the stuff that if you know the game and maybe you've played it before and you might return, that's the kind of trailer that it tends to be aimed at you. While the ones like the Citadel trailer or something like that tend to be more aimed at people that have never played EVE before.
Seven Dwarfs asks, when is the Marshal going to hit? That's all I want to know.
So the Marshal is completely working as of Lifeblood. The last thing that it needed was its graphics, and that's coming in Lifeblood. And I don't know exactly when we're going to distribute it to all the people that are getting it in the first pass. So the people, for anyone that doesn't know, the Marshal will first be distributed to everyone who attended both Vegas and FanFest this last year. And so I assume it'll be pretty quickly after Lifeblood releases, but that's the community guys will get to that as soon as they can. And then next year, early next year, we're going to be putting it into Project Discovery. So at that point, everyone gets access to it.
So someone had told me that it came out. The Marshal is only going to be sent to people who went to both FanFest and Vegas, and some other people had said it was just for people who went to Vegas, and I thought it was just people who went to Vegas. Now I am sad. I need it.
That was what we originally announced when we first announced these ships. It was, hey, this is going to be the frigate was for everyone who went to FanFest. The cruiser was to everyone who bought their FanFest ticket before the end of the year last year, so bought an early bird ticket. And then the battleship was to everyone who attended both. And then the idea was always to have that be the initial introduction of them. So you get it a bit earlier if you do those, right. And then to introduce them in another way in the future. And at the time, we didn't know what that other way would be. We just knew that, hey, we'll look for a good opportunity and one will come up, and it did in Project Discovery.
So someone, if anyone has Marshal they want to give me on release, I'll be whelping it day one if you give it. Thank you. Can Fozzie give us a number on how many Marshals there will be?
I don't know how many are going to be given out in that first wave. But then once they become available in Project Discovery, then the effective number becomes infinite, because everyone can get one from Discovery at that point. One per character once they reach a certain level in Project Discovery.
Asking whether if we can ever bring back the original Dami set of 10 drones. Buy a Guardian Vexor, Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah. So the simple answer is probably never, because of the fact that a bunch of drones causes load problems in fleets, causes more load, which means more tie-dye. So the reduction from 10 to 5 way back in the day was done for that reason. And I don't think we'd ever want to re-add 10 drones to a battleship that could potentially become a mainline fleet battleship again. Because if everybody starts using that, then it would just cause too much load and too much tie-dye, more than we would get otherwise. Right. So having it on the Guardian Vexor is fine, because nobody's going to bring a Guardian Vexor fleet to a big battle.
Let's see. Cancer Garmer asks, wants you if you can expand upon the Duels and Wagers.
Yeah, so this is a small little feature that we're introducing in Lifeblood that we decided to try out. And the idea basically is just the normal duel system, except that now when you start a duel, you'll have the option of putting a wager in. And then the person who's receiving the duel invite will see, hey, this person has asked you for a duel, and this duel would have a wager of whatever amount of ISK. If they say yes, then the ISK is taken from both wallets and put into escrow. And then if somebody wins the fight, they get the ISK if somebody blows up the other one.
So you're saying if someone wins the fight, so if no one blows up, do they both lose the ISK?
I think it gets distributed back to them like evenly. I'm not positive about that though.
If
It would be kind
they,
of hilarious if they both lose. If they get
yeah,
like,
if they chicken out, they should both lose the ISK.
but it's worth noting that this follows our normal duel mechanics. Remember, this is EVE Online, where you have to be careful about trusting people. So that means that, for instance, the duel mechanics still do allow you to dock up and switch ships mid-duel. So just keep that in mind if you're accepting a duel for a whole bunch of money and somebody outside of like G244 or Amar in a frigate asks you to get into a duel. They may just dock up and come back out in a Marauder and kill you.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that you could dock up and reship.
Yeah. The duel system doesn't actually care. It all it does is it creates a limited engagement. So that's the same kind of thing you would get if, for instance, you shot at somebody who was suspected. And then that limited engagement lasts for I think 10 minutes or 15 minutes, something like that. And if one kills the other, then that's the end of the duel.
That's awesome. Will wager duels not make RMT more easy?
No, because we have logs of all those as well, and so it's just the same as like transfer and ISK, basically, right? We would just see the transfer, and it's the same as any other way of moving ISK from one character to another.
Any aim for when Saw will change? Will it be after pauses are phased out? I know you said you weren't happy. You weren't happy with the direction the Saw went, right? Or it wasn't ideal for you, right?
Yeah, it's definitely far from ideal. There's a lot we'd like to improve. And I don't have anything that I can announce right now about when the next set of changes will happen, unfortunately. But I would definitely like to get time to dive back into it soon.
What's a better question? What's the best way of scamming Fozzie thought of with wagers so far? I think we just heard it. I think.
Yeah, wager scamming will be pretty good. I mean, there's it's Eve, right? So there's infinite ways to scam. In fact, actually, one of my favorites that I saw recently, there was one of these ones that I kind of kick myself for not coming up with myself before I started CCP. I don't scam people now. CCP employees are not to scam people, but I did a bit back in the day.
Nice.
And it's somebody started running around in a hauler and inviting people to duels in freighters in the major freight routes and giving them a convo and saying, hey, I'm just here in my hauler and I can web you if you want. So if you accept my duel, then I'll web you into warp. And I need the duel so that I don't get concorded. I'm just here to help. And if people say yes, he webs them into warp, but then he goes, runs off, switches to another ship, and then chases them down further down the pipe and kills them.
Yes. Lacey LaFleur is an in-game character name of someone that does that a lot. It's like my hero. He kills like 2 to 30 bill freighters with sometimes he has just a Vexer, like it's like a VNI, and he's like, yeah, it took me like 10 minutes, but there's nothing they can do. It's like, dang, it's amazing.
Yeah, so that's that I think is a very clever one. And like everything in Eve, it's always important to just be careful of what trust you put into other people.
Let's see. You mentioned something about possible remote bubble deployment from citadels. I know this is kind of a rough idea to start with, but were you thinking more like you're able to deploy it from a citadel, or like launch it like a bomb and it just like deploys like X kilometers out?
Probably working like the super carrier burst projectors, so that you would again, I can't promise this feature, it's just something we're
Right.
investigating, but having it be the 2-point targeting system, the same targeting system you use for super weapons on Titan super carriers. You basically pick a spot in space, and then it'll pulse there for a couple of seconds to give people time to get out of the way if they're observant, and then put up a bubble in that spot.
All right. Because that sounds awesome. That sounds really. Um, that sounds great. I mean, both for defense and attacking. Like if you're defending your citadel, then you can place a bubble. And your saber dies. Your last saber dies or something. You can use the citadel to deploy the defensive bubble, um, and same goes for if you're defending the citadel, like and trying to attack them, the attackers. You can potentially just bubble their entire fleet, and then get a nice or get a warp in, and then bubble their entire fleet.
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of thing, I think obviously it would need to be balanced with things like the size of the bubble and how often it can be used and the delay before the bubble enables. But it's something we're interested in exploring, that we're playing around with in prototyping at the moment.
You mentioned something in the roundtable. This is what I touched on earlier. That really it was kind of eye opening to the amount of the difference in perspective I have as a player compared to you as a developer. It was to do with someone asked about damage caps, and you said it's doubtful that we'll do away with them, but you would like to introduce something to show, because currently the people that if you're over the damage cap, if you have 70 max, then like 95% of those are irrelevant to the damage cap, but they are contributing. But you want to see their number show up as like this amount was resisted, stuff like that. And you mentioned like you put it in a way that you want their X's and zeros and ones to mean something when they're firing their zeros and ones to the opponent's zeros and ones, and
Yeah. So for situations like that, it's really important for us to try to get us to create situations where people feel powerful. And although the damage caps may meet the kind of functional goals, the mechanic goals, the fact that they show 0 damage doesn't meet the player experience goals. It doesn't make people feel the way they should when they're like an immortal rock star god flying a super weapon that is worth more than the entire combined GDP of the Earth.
right.
You should feel like that, right? And so we think there's better ways to show that in the UI, and that's one of the things we're interested in doing with this Upwell 2.0 or after that if we don't make it into the initial one.
That's yeah, that perspective was really cool to listen to, just because it was the base idea, the damage resistance was great. It just showing the perspective behind it was really eye opening, at least for me. Fungus asked, will we be getting new ships?
Yes.
Yes.
So I mean, yeah, the answer is definitely yes. The really simple answer is that there's actually 3 new ships coming out in Lifeblood. 4 if you got the Marshal, I guess, but the Marshal was already announced. The Gristis capitals. But yeah, we're interested. There's a lot of new ships we're interested in adding over time, and we're exploring a bunch of cool options for that stuff. Nothing that I can announce at this time, but we keep a backlog of wish list ships we'd like to add, and types of ships and mechanics we'd like to add to new ships. And I think there's some really exciting stuff coming soon.
I heard that the Titan, the Angel Titan, when you look at it from the bottom, makes the Angel Cartel logo.
It looks a lot like the Angel Cartel logo from the top.
That's so fantastic. That's amazing.
What we have with the Angel Titan at this point is just concept art at the moment.
Right.
So, but yes, that concept art does have that feature, which is really cool. The Angel concepts in general, I think, are really cool. We showed them off at Eve Down Under, and I think we showed them off in the PvE presentation again at Vegas, if I remember.
Yeah, we did. Let's see. Someone has CCP ever thought of introducing wear and tear on ships that use afterburners? The physical stress could slightly damage the ship's components when used more than X number of times.
Potentially, not something that we've thought a lot about in that specific way. But adding modules that have like that consume charges, like the ancillary modules, adding things with decay. Is always nice for both helping balance really powerful things. So potentially we could have like an extra powerful afterburner that has that as a downside, and also for just keeping the economy churning. Right, you need stuff to exit the economy, and that includes not just ISK but also all the other currencies like LP. It includes modules and minerals and Tech 2 minerals and Tech 3 components and gas and all that. That all moving through the economy then provides enough cool economic opportunities for all the people earlier in the chain doing the mining and harvesting and manufacturing.
Awesome. First, before we get how much longer are you looking to stay on? Do we have a time frame? I don't want to keep you too long if you got stuff you need to take care of.
Okay. Yes, that's good timing because I actually just got a notification that the streaming station I'm at is about to be used for something else, and that we're going to be streaming the Sissy mass.
Yeah,
test.
the mass test of the moon mining. Awesome.
So we want to just do like maybe 2 more questions and then wrap it up.
Sure. Tully Woolley asks, when will CCP nerf the capital movement through stargates?
Nerf that? I don't think we have any plans on nerfing that. If anything, we'd like to make it a bit less annoying by helping you bump a bit less when you jump through. That would be nice.
Jump fatigue. Yeah, you talked a lot about it being a charge up a mechanic as opposed to a penalizing.
I definitely
mechanic.
like to. I'd like to make some big changes to the way jump fatigue works. Again, that's another one of those mechanics that meets the mechanic goals but doesn't meet the player experience goals. It just doesn't feel good, and I think there's ways that we can provide the same mechanic goals of making sure that a giant super blob isn't running over the whole universe, getting involved in every fight, without having those negative experiences for players. And again, I can't say for sure when we'll get a chance to dive into that and put in the work involved to change it again, but I'd really like to change it. Yeah.
Awesome. So one last question. As a Mars citizen, will there ever be capitals in HiSec?
Quite possibly. We have to be very careful with that, but it's something that we've looked at a couple of times before, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens eventually, but not right away at least.
Okay, so we're not going to use up any more of Fozzie's time. The station is going to be used for the mass test stream. Thank you so much, Fozzie, for hanging out, for coming on stream.
Thanks for having me.
I had a blast. I hope you had fun, and we'll definitely do this some more in the future. Maybe try to get some other devs on. So put in a good word for me, Fozzie.
Oh, I will.
It was awesome to hang out with you, E-Vegas. It was great to see you. Fozzie and all of CCP is incredibly approachable. Love to talk. Even got bitched at by Cork for 20 minutes, and he was still super chill. So everyone give Fozzie all the love. Chat MVP, that's right, Skygan. Yeah, Hazel, I'll bring that up in a second. So Fozzie, take care. Have a great one, and I will talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. All right. That was legit. Fozzie, have fun. Get your CCP people.